Everybody, welcome back to American History with Mr. Finn. Today we are getting to the start of the American Civil War. Again, a terrible event in our country's history. However, let's take a look at it. Last class we were looking at the differences between the North and the South. The North was becoming more and more sure about their hatred of slavery. They had changed as far as their culture. There was a lot of different people living in the North now because of immigration and industrialization, bringing those populations. Most people settled in the North when they came from other places in the world, whereas the South had just continued to exist the way it always had with this agriculture, farming base, and just expanded in that way, whereas the North was changing and causing major differences. We talked about John Brown a little bit, and we talked about Bleeding Kansas. We'll get to our last event involving John Brown, which is Harper's Ferry, and I did talk to you about Harper's Ferry last class, but just so you know, this is a U.S. arsenal. John Brown, I have some notes here, tries, I'll explain in a second, to rob, the guns. Tries to go to this arsenal and rob this United States arsenal where you hold all the ammunition, cannons, guns, everything. John Brown is going to go to Harper's Ferry. He is going to lead a raid, meaning people that were related to him and other people who were really strong believers in abolition and the hatred of slavery. And he goes there and he gets into the arsenal. However, he is stopped. Most of his family is killed, like his sons who are with him. He is taken into custody. He has now committed a crime against the United States of America, even though he was like, hey, I'm trying to get guns and hand them to slaves, and I want to end slavery. It is still a United States arsenal that he is raided. John Brown is going to be hanged, meaning that he is going to be put to death. That is a penalty for treason if you commit a crime against your country. And the reason why we bring up Harper's Ferry and John Brown, one, John Brown was pretty influential in Bleeding Kansas and now Harper's Ferry, and is like a major abolitionist figure during this time period. But also it's another reason that we're going to see the differences between North and South, because in the North they're going to say, no, how could you execute John Brown? He was just trying to do, he was trying to end slavery, which is a noble cause, and blah, blah, blah. And the Southerners are saying, no, how can you say that he was such a nice person? He's trying to do this. Like, he was attacking people in the South, and he was trying to stop our way of life, and blah, 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 blah. Like, they're going back and forth on this. They just have such a different view of things. The North looks at John Brown like a hero, and the South looks at John Brown as a terrorist, and that is the difference between the two at this time. So then we jump to this guy. We should know this name, Abraham Lincoln, because this is happening in the 1850s. Abraham Lincoln is going to win the election of 1860. We're not going to jump way into the election, but basically Abraham Lincoln becomes president. As we have here, becomes president really without, and this is the important part, without Southern support. So what does that mean? I mean, when I say without Southern support, it was zero support. He didn't win barely. If he won more than 100 votes in the South, I'd be surprised. He won. People in the South viewed Abraham Lincoln as the president that would come in and try to end slavery. Even though he himself said that he was not looking to end slavery, he did not support it. It didn't matter. If you were a Southerner, you thought, if this guy wins, our way of life is over. He's going to end slavery. So he got no support in the South, but he still becomes president. Now this is where the problem begins. If you're in the South and you see that this person, Abraham Lincoln, just became president, and none of the South voted for Abraham Lincoln, what does that tell you about future elections? So if you're a Southerner, you're thinking, none of us voted for him, and he still won, which means that next election, None of us are going to vote for the next person that comes along. The North will vote for whoever, and the North will always be choosing the president, and someone's going to tell us what to do, even though we'll never have a voice in who becomes president. And that's the way the South is going to feel about it when Abraham Lincoln in 1860 becomes president. They say, how can this be? None of us voted for him. He's still going to be the president. One state is going to take it a step too far. And that first state to, I was going to put the word secede. That is the word, but I was going to explain it here. First state to. Actually, you know what? Because we are taking notes, I want to make sure that I don't spell it as succeed, but I say secede. There it is. S-E-C. Secede. I was all off there for a second. Anyway, first state to secede, meaning leave. This means to leave the country, is going to be none other than South Carolina. There's our note. South Carolina is going to be the first state to secede or leave the United States of America. They're going to say, that's it. We're done. We're out. We are, once he becomes president, we are declaring ourselves out of the United States of America. Now, can you have that? Can you have states just saying, I don't like the president, so we're not part of the country? And then, we're back now if we do like the president, or different states just popping out of the United States of America. It cannot be. The country cannot exist if states are just allowed to leave and come back. This is not a confederacy, meaning agreement, like the Articles of Confederation, if you remember, where it was just a loose agreement of states. No, we are the United States of America. We are one country. You cannot leave. It's just not possible. So that's the way Abraham Lincoln views it. He views South Carolina as in rebellion, whereas South Carolina views itself as broken away from the United States of America. Now, where do we start? And this is where we start and end today. Let's talk about Fort Sumter. Fort Sumter. Here we go. Right to the heart of it. In South Carolina. All right, so Fort Sumter. There's a fort there, meaning that's a U.S. Army base. And they're running out of supplies. They need food and stuff. However, South Carolina's like, whoa, we broke away. Fort Sumter, you guys need to leave. This Fort Sumter is ours now. This is in South Carolina. The U.S. military cannot be here. So Abraham Lincoln is forced with a decision. What do I do? Do I acknowledge that? If I say, yeah, you're right, South Carolina, that would mean that states can then leave and come back and whatever else. So he has to still always say, nope, you guys are just in rebellion. We need to bring you back in and, put down this rebellion. And so South Carolina's like, do what you got to do, Abraham Lincoln. So he is going to supply the fort like you normally would. There's a United States military fort. It's running out of supplies. What are we going to do? Well, we're going to send supplies to that military fort. That's what we would do. And so, Fort Sumter is having supplies come to it. As soon as the supplies get close, South Carolina realizes that, hey, if they bring them supplies, they can just hang out there for another 6 months, another year, another however long. If they get supplies, they can do whatever they want. And so South Carolina makes a decision. Now, this is the smart part by Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln saying, hey, we're just going to resupply our fort. We have no problems with anything. We're just here to resupply. South Carolina is going to view it and say, well, you are now coming into our new country, our broken away area. That's an act of war. So both sides are going to be able to say, point their finger at you. You started it. Abraham Lincoln's going to say, hey, South Carolina, we were just resupplying, so when you fired upon the fort, you started it. The South is going to say, hey, Abraham Lincoln, we broke away and you invaded our new country. You guys started it. So, long story short, let's just take a look here. As you know what's going to happen. They're going to go over supply the fort. South Carolina is going to basically bomb the fort. And they bomb it for like 24 straight hours. And no one's going to die. So that's good news as far as this part goes. Because there's not a lot of good news coming with the Civil War as far as deaths. But for 24 hours, they bomb it. They basically collapse Fort Sumter. In the morning, the general who was in charge at Fort Sumter waves the white flag and says, hey, we're done. He's allowed to leave, and it is what it is. But South Carolina has now fired on a U.S. fort, and this is the beginning of the Civil War. From this point, Abraham Lincoln is going to continue to say the South is just in rebellion, but from on that side, on this side, from this point, we are going to start to see other states join South Carolina in secession. So we'll look at that next time, but this was just the beginning of the Civil War. Next time we're going to look at the different states that start to go down like a domino, just becoming part of this new Confederate States of America, which we'll talk about. And then we're going to have to figure out what happens, the North versus the South, and make sure this is what I wanted. I'm so glad that I stopped for a second. Because we don't go really into Abraham Lincoln all that much. So what I want from you today is give me 5 fun facts. Look up Abraham Lincoln. Tell me 5 things you find out about him. That's it. I mean, it could be anything. Where was he from? When was he born? Anything about Abraham Lincoln you can find. 5 facts, and turn that into me today. That'll be for participation and attendance purposes. Again, as we come back, we'll start to look at the different states fall, the new country of the Confederates popping up, and we'll see what happens from there. See you next class.